Welcome, everybody. I'm Marc David, founder of the Institute for the Psychology of Eating. We're back in the Psychology of Eating podcast. I'm with Scott today. Welcome, Scott.
Welcome. Hello.
Glad you're here. Glad we're doing this together. And you probably know, if you've listened to the podcast before, my favorite question to ask is if you could wave your magic wand and get whatever you wanted with food and body, what would that be for you?
Oh, I always come back to the same word, and it's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom from the restriction, freedom from the rules, freedom from just worrying about food and exercise, and just being liberated.
So what does not being liberated look like for you? If you would describe then the challenge, how does not being free show up for you specifically?
How does it show up for me? By, just the opposite is restriction. And when pretty much, and this isn't as much the case today as it was 10 years ago, let's say, but basically everything in my life has been kind of determined by, I'll just say ED rather than eating disorder. I mean, ED is the personification, right, of an eating disorder that's kind of outside of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything I do had been based on ED's rules for me. And if somebody said, "Oh, let's go hiking," then I would think, okay, well, what time are we going to go hiking? Because I need to be back in time for dinner, or, how do meals fit into this hike, and, or not eating. I don't know, just, basically there isn't any aspect of my life that it hasn't touched. And so I've just have felt very restricted and, kind of imprisoned by the eating disorder.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that you overeat or binge eat or emotionally eat?
It's a good point, because particularly no, I don't binge eat, and I don't purge. It's restrictive. It's
Mm-hmm.
more anorexic.
Yes.
And but what I was going to say is the emotional eating phrase, I think it's all emotional eating.
Yes.
It seems to me that it's all about emotions.
Yes.
So, but anyway, yes, it is about emotional eating, but it's not about binging in that.
Understood. Have you ever in your life been diagnosed as having anorexia, or is that?
Yeah, my challenges with food and I'll add exercise in there too, has gone back to when I was in high school. And now I'm in my 60s. So, I mean, it's been a long road to some type of decent life and recovery. Mm-hmm. But it goes way back.
How old would you say that it goes back to? You just mentioned high school. Does it go back before that?
I'd say that the seeds of it have gone back to when I was just very small. I think that I was always, personality qualities that I have and just kind of environmental factors brought me into collide with wrestling when I was in high school. And it was really like when I was 16, 17 years old that I started wrestling in high school. And I became hyper vigilant about my body weight. It was the first time in my life that I really focused on my body weight and on my body and developing my body and getting some accolades from my body and thinking it was all about my body. And so Yeah, it started back then, and it's kind of morphed into different, there was a time when I was bulimic and did a lot of bulimic type of, purging and that kind of thing, both through exercise and also through actual purging.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it's been more of a restrictive type of, and yes, I've been diagnosed. I've been to a number of treatment programs, and so I've been through the testing grounds, I think.
Yes, yes. What do you think you've learned along the way? If you were going to write your memoirs, what are some of the key life lessons you would say that you've learned from this journey?
Actually, I'm writing a memoir right now. So it's funny you mentioned that, but that it's one of the key things is that it's not about my external world. It's about my internal world. That I really have done a lot of soul searching and a lot of work on building up the way I feel about myself from the inside, not getting accolades from people or, getting feeling good about myself from external sources, and that it's not really about my body. It's about who I am as an individual. And took me a long time to kind of come to peace with myself and to love myself and to accept myself. But that's been the journey for me.
Well, good for you. And you're still on the journey.
And I'm still on the journey. I don't know that I'll ever not be on the journey.
Mm-hmm.
I question sometimes whether I think some people can recover totally. And I think they believe they recovered, and more power to them. I don't know if I'm in that group or not, that can wash away all those years of being kind of regimented by my eating disorder and just pretend like it never happened. I mean, there's always going to be something there.
Sure. Yeah. So are you married, kids?
No, I'm divorced. I have a dog. Everybody in Boulder has a dog, right?
Right.
So I've got my dog.
How long were you married for?
13 years.
Mm-hmm. What age were you when you were married?
I got married when I was 36, so I was a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
And then things just didn't work out. And we separated a couple of times, and then I ended up divorcing.
Mm-hmm. And how did your relationship with food and your relationship with your body, did that impact your relationship with your then wife?
That's a real good question. And I'm sure it did. I know it did. It's affected all my relationships with people, I believe, but in particular with my wife, because I couldn't hide from her. And she honestly, she really accepted me and my eating disorder. She didn't let me get away with things, but she helped me. She helped me with my eating disorder, I think. Helped me follow a meal plan and cook the right things for me at the right times. And there were many times when I would not want to eat lunch or not want to eat a meal, and she'd just like, no, you're eating, So I did, but anyway, during the marriage, there was a lot of anxiety about over food and about going to the gym. And there was a lot of discussion about how much time I was spending at the gym, or how much attention I put towards my eating disorder.
Yes. So,
sorry.
Do you desire to be in a relationship moving forward?
Yeah, I do. I just putting my phone on airplane mode. Sorry about that. Yeah, I would like to have a relationship. I've had several relationships since my marriage, never to the point where I thought I was going to get married again. But, and I don't know that I even really want to get married, but I would like to have a relationship with somebody.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you're ready?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think I'm ready. I'm ready to share my life, not with my eating disorder and somebody else, but with somebody else.
Yes. Yes. It's interesting because, how you made eating disorder into ED, into Ed, into this alter ego. And a lot of times that's a useful distinction, because it almost becomes this other entity that we're then in relationship with. And whether it's a true official eating disorder or any kind of eating challenge, if we're just constantly thinking about food, thinking about body, thinking about what we need to be restricted about, what's working, what isn't working, what I should have ate, shouldn't have ate, should have exercised, shouldn't have, that's who we're sleeping with. That's who we're holding hands with. That's who we're going out to dinner with. It's a troubled relationship with food doesn't always leave a lot of room, or enough room sometimes, for the other person, for the actual other real person that we're in relationship with. So I'm happy for you that you can at least say, to yourself, you can say out loud, yeah, I want a relationship, and I'm ready to actually be in relationship with that person, without, the eating disorder necessarily having to be sleeping right there in the bed with us.
Exactly. And I can't imagine what it's really like being on the other side of it. I'm sure it's very difficult for the spouse, or, the significant other of somebody that has an eating disorder, because you can never really stand in their shoes.
Yes.
And she really never understood exactly how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
But I could never really exactly understand. I mean, I can imagine, but she, anybody in relationship that has an eating disorder, I mean, they can't help probably but feeling like they come in second.
Yes. So are you working these days?
No, I've retired. Just working every day. I write, mm-hmm. and I've been working on this book of mine, and which I'm really have been enjoying doing. I love the process, mm-hmm. and I've learned a lot from it. So it's a good cathartic exercise for me.
So is it true to say that you're enjoying retired life?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do you ever think how long you want to live for?
Yeah, I do. I've thought about it. My dad and his father lived till they were in their 90s. So I have longevity on my side.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I'll live that long or not, but I would like to live as long as I can with a quality of life that is meaningful to me.
Sure. Have you thought about, so let's say you have a longer life. Let's say you have 20 or 30-ish years ahead of you. Have you thought about what you want to do with those years?
Yeah. Yeah. Because for years, I really felt like I was kind of a rudderless ship, honestly. I had a number of different careers and jobs and just had a difficult time. I hate the cliche finding myself, but I did. And,
Yes.
That's the truth of the matter. And so I've always wanted to have a purpose. And I don't know, when I'm finished with this memoir, I'd really like to write something else. I'd like to write. I enjoy the process of writing. And so that, along with other interests of mine, I think will keep me productive and give me a meaningful life.
Mm-hmm. If you were looking at the movie of your life, what do you have the most regrets about? Or what do you feel most disappointed about?
I have to be honest and say, having had an eating disorder, I mean, in some regards, my eating disorder has helped me grow. But on the other hand, I think about how much it's gotten in the way of my life. I mean, I don't think there's an aspect of my life, as I had mentioned before, that it hasn't touched in a negative way. And I would love to have my life again without an eating disorder and having the freedom to explore all these different avenues that I was afraid to explore before.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for being so honest about that. I'd love to hang here for a moment because I think for you, this is, in a lot of ways, ground zero. Sometimes when we have an eating challenge or an eating disorder, we want to figure it out. We want to understand it, want to fix it. We want to heal it, and we want to move beyond it. That's sort of the natural and intelligent response to it. And it's easy after some number of years to, once we have more wisdom, to look back on it and go, oh, okay, wow, I can see now how that affected me.
Right.
And in my universe, how I view these things is that, food and body, our relationship with food, our relationship with our body, it's a great teacher. And it teaches each of us differently. We've each had a different journey. I've had my journey. You've had your journey. Every person that you meet has their own journey. And so much of it is, where are you at in your journey, and what's it asking of you? What is your relationship with food and body trying to teach you now? How is it calling you? And also, in my view, a man who's 50 something and up is sort of officially in the king stage of life. And in the king stage of life, it's time to get clear what your kingdom is. Kingdom starts in the mind. It starts in the mind and in the body. That's the original kingdom. And then it's your apartment, it's your dog, it's the people in your life, it's whoever you bump into. And it's the purpose that you have. And it's how you share yourself with the world. And what's interesting about a king is that a good king sort of sits on the throne and isn't sitting there looking around going, do you all approve of me? Am I okay? Is this good enough?
Right.
You and I wouldn't want to follow that king.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how old that king is, how many gray hairs he has, whether he limps, whether whatever it is, a good king just knows himself and is at the point where he can give, he can bestow. Kings grant wishes. Kings are able to just show up and, okay, here's what I'm delivering to you. Here's how I'm helping elevate you. Part of being able to do that as a king is being able to look back on life and essentially forgive yourself. I don't know if this is true for you, but I'm imagining there's a part of you that hasn't quite landed in the place called, and I can forgive myself for this.
Yeah. Well, I'll comment on that for a second.
Yes.
Because it's a good analogy, the king and being in that part of my life now. I don't blame myself particularly for my eating disorder. I mean, I used to be accused by my family for not having enough willpower, that it was all just a matter of willpower.
Mm-hmm.
And, on one hand, there is a lot of willpower involved. There is. I can choose to eat or I can choose not to eat. And it takes willpower to eat, even if you're not hungry. On the other hand, I never chose to have an eating disorder. I never chose to be born a certain way. It's like, it would be like kind of criticizing myself because I have green eyes.
Yes.
I can't really help that. It happened. But there are certain things in my life that I can control that I realize now is not my fault. Well, no, I'm kind of skipping around. I have the freedom of choice. If I had some other disease where I didn't have a freedom of choice, like, I don't know, I don't even want to go there. But, an eating disorder, I think I can make choices. I do make deliberate choices. But anyway, I hope I'm making sense here. I just don't, I don't really, maybe on the inside, maybe down deep, I do blame myself, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't know what there is to forgive.
Mm-hmm. Let me try this, because what I'm sensing for you is that there's a certain, I don't know if it's a lack of forgiveness. I don't know if it's a disappointment, or it might be a certain kind of resignation relative to, I have this eating disorder. I've had this eating disorder. I'm still dealing with it to the degree that I am. I've learned from it. Let me make a suggestion. And this is a little bit of a different way to look at things. I think it would be very interesting for you if you took about 3 or 4 months and, as an experiment, and let go of the concept called, I have an eating disorder. And let me explain what I mean. Eating disorder is a term. It's a couple of words, and it has a certain meaning and power for us. When I say the word addict Addict is a very powerful word. To different people, it means different things, but it carries a lot of power. And it says so much more than what the word says. When you say eating disorder, you're thinking about everything you've gone through in your life, which is totally understandable. Here's when it started. Here's how it started. Here I am in wrestling. Yeah, maybe the seeds were planted beforehand, but now I have this eating disorder, and here I am. I'm weighing myself. I'm obsessed about, my body fat, my muscle, my weight, and then that comes with food, and then that comes with exercise, and then throughout the years, here's what I've done, and here's all my behaviors that define this eating disorder. What can happen is, understandably, if I have a condition that I don't want, I want to fix it. If my heart's not working, I want it fixed. If my leg's not working, I want it fixed. If my relationship with food isn't working, I want it fixed. The slight challenge there is fixing, particularly when it's in the personal, psychological, emotional, spiritual kind of realm. Fixing implies that I'm broken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's subtle. It's a subtle distinction. But if I'm broken, then essentially I'm not the real me.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't be the real me until I'm fixed. Mm-hmm. The term eating disorder can be almost like a curse. It can be this psychophysiologic pronouncement, because we're saying there's a part of me that's broken. There's a part of me that needs to be fixed. Until I'm fixed, I'm not the real me. What do I got to do? What's the next step? What's wrong? A reframe would be, okay, I'm a human being. I'm innately whole. I'm innately good. And I got certain issues. I got certain places that I'm learning. And if you take away the term eating disorder, then you have a relationship with food and a relationship with your body. And here's what that relationship looks like. And here's how you're trying to work on it. Yeah, I want more freedom around food and body. So the starting place is me, as I am right now. Here's Scott, and you have a certain relationship with food and body. All things considered ain't so bad. You look good. You sound good. You live in a good place, and you're set up for your golden years here. All things considered, not so bad.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that term eating disorder, all I'm wanting you to do is just go on an eating disorder diet, meaning don't use that verbally or to yourself, and think in terms of, I'm just a guy who has this interesting relationship with food and body that's teaching me. And yeah, something, I want more freedom around it. How am I going to do that? As opposed to returning to home base, which is I have an eating disorder.
Right.
Because that can become sort of a little sinkhole for so much history and so many memories and so many associations. And yeah, our past is always with us. I was a stutterer for the first 12 years of life. I couldn't say a single word without stuttering it 8 or 9 or 10 times. I'm not a stutterer anymore, but that kid still lives in me somewhere, somehow. It drove me to public speak.
Toastmasters.
Yes. So yes, to your point, it's always going to be with you, but it's reimagining yourself. It's redefining yourself. in a way where you're looking at yourself as a whole human being who happens to have challenges like any other human being. But at your core, you're whole.
Right.
Because essentially, when I'm listening to you, I don't think there's something wrong with this person. I think you have your unique relationship with food and body, and you've been on a long journey with it. And it's still important for you to work on it, and good for you that you're still working on it. But I don't see a dysfunction. I don't see a disorder. I don't see a dis-ease. I see a person, I see a man who's learning how to embody. We come into this world, we have to learn how to embody. We have to learn how to be in a body. Being a body means you got to learn how to take care of yourself, put your clothes on. You got to learn how to drive a car. That's embodiment. You can't drive a car if you're not in your body. You got to learn how to do all the things a human being needs to do to be functional. That's embodiment. And part of being in a body is learning how to be an eater in a way that works for you.
Right.
You're still learning how to be an eater in a way that works for you. That's fine. And of course, in any given moment, you can look back on it and go, damn, that's influenced my whole life. That sucks. And yeah, it would be nice to have a do-over for sure. I'm with you. There's things I wouldn't mind doing over. And you're in the king stage of life where you are claiming your kinghood and, as best as humanly possible, putting aside the regrets.
Right.
Because regrets are like a ball and chain. And one way to put aside regrets is to put aside any kind of languaging that takes us into a model of viewing ourselves that's like a disease model. So with all due respect to the eating disorder universe, it's seen as a disease model. It's a pronouncement of you have a disorder. And I understand the necessity of that. And there's a point at which, and I think you're at that point, where you're ready to shed the languaging and just rebrand, rename, recontext, reimagine what it is you're actually dealing with. So it's framed in a positive light. How does that all land for you?
Oh, yeah, that really, I can relate to that. I really can. I think that's really a great point. The whole idea of recovery, let's say, that quote unquote recovery, which I've kind of been focusing on, but it's like AA or, people that are alcoholic, they focus on their recovery and they should, but it keeps them in the disease kind of mentality. From what you're saying, it seems to me.
It can, for sure. Yes.
Because recovery is about, honestly, it's about not being in recovery too. I mean, it's about recovery, it's about relapse, and then it's about getting back on the train again or on the horse again. And, I like what you say about, taking a 3-month sabbatical from saying I'm a recovering or I've got an eating disorder. And just, I'm Scott, I'm a person, I'm a human being.
Bingo. And just try that on and really try it on like you're trying on new clothes. Like wear it and feel into that, because I promise you do that and there's going to be a certain power in there that will be very welcome, and a certain potential shift that'll be very welcome, because you're just taking away a label and seeing, okay, Who am I? Who is Scott without this internal conversation? It doesn't mean that you're not working on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you're not noticing the moments of, hey, Scott, wait a second, you're being restrictive right now. Is that working for you? Is that what you want to do? Or, wow, you caught yourself. I was just being really restrictive. Okay, note to self. So it's not like you stopped working on yourself. It's just that the context is completely different. You're a human being who's learning and growing. You've lived a life. You've learned a ton. And you continue to learn and grow in lots of ways. You're being a writer. That's another journey of learning and growing. So you're just continuing your learning and growing, absent of a label, absent of a negative diagnosis. And in a way, in the recovery model, we can legitimately say, or I would say, you're recovered. Recovered doesn't mean everything is perfect. Recovered means you have yourself. You're not perfect, but you basically have yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can get by. You can support yourself. I don't get that you're the kind of person that falls deep into black holes and can't get out. So you have yourself. And I think it's time to be that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's profound. I mean, it is. I agree with you. And I really like that direction that you're pointing me towards, because that the word that came to my mind is identity. And I read a really good book on eating disorders for this. I think geared maybe towards men. I'm trying to remember, but it's been a while since I read it. But it was all about identity and changing your identity. We identify with being an eating disorder individual, rather than a human being individual. I mean, it's
yes,
and so I have been working on my identity, and I'm trying to step out of the shoes of being an eating disorder person and identifying with other characteristics of myself that I'm going to enjoy living with, and that will help me live a more purposeful life.
Yes. Wonderfully put. It's your identity is not, I am a person who has an eating disorder. Eating disorder is a noun, and eating disorder makes it sound like a noun. All an eating disorder is, on a certain level, it's a set of unwanted behaviors. Mm-hmm. Eating disorders are a symptom. They're not actually the disease themselves. Mm-hmm. They're always a symptom of something else. It's a set of behaviors. Those behaviors, you might have had them or continue to have some of them, but they're definitionally not who you are. Mm-hmm. Who you are is a gazillion times more than eating disorder behaviors. And as we focus on that, as we focus on who you actually really are, you're this human being who's done a lot of work on himself, who's had a long journey, who's been through a lot, who's now retired, and who's now wanting to write and share certain things with the world. That's who you are. That's the bulk of who you are. Okay, you're a dog owner and you have a dog. Okay, that's also part of who you are. Maybe you cook. That's also part of who you are. The eating disorder, that's in your past.
Right.
You have behaviors that you want to change. Great. You have a relationship with your body that you wish to be more free. Great. We're working on that. But not because there's something wrong with you, not because there's something that needs to be fixed, but simply because we all come here to grow and evolve and learn.
Yes.
So we're just taking out any original sin here. There's no sin to remove. Yes. Such that when it's removed, now you're healed and you're pure. No, we're just removing the notion that there was anything wrong to begin with. Defective, broken, unwhole, unholy, sinful, shameful. Yeah. You might have felt that way in the past.
Yeah, I did. But kind of goes back to your question to me about, or my statement that I don't feel like I have anything to really be, to feel guilty about or shameful about or find fault for having this eating disorder. I mean, I guess to simply put it, it is what it is. It was what it was, and it's time to move on.
Yes. Yes. It doesn't serve you anymore.
Right.
And to me, the it that doesn't serve you, yes, it's the behaviors, but far more so, it's how we view those behaviors, how you view those behaviors, how you've been taught to view those behaviors. We've been taught to view those behaviors as you have a disorder, therefore something is wrong, therefore you have to fix it. Therefore you have to figure all these things out. And I wouldn't say to everybody else what I'm saying to you. I wouldn't just go to any person that's been diagnosed with an eating disorder and say, no, you shouldn't think that way. I'm just saying for you where you're at,
right, at
this life stage, and just what I'm sensing about where you're at in your own personal journey, I just feel like you are beyond ready to graduate in terms of how you talk to yourself about this.
Yeah, right.
So for now on, you are Scott, who is like everybody else. I'm working on my relationship with food and body. In fact, a lot of people aren't even working on those. And they're just sort of letting old habit run them.
Mm-hmm.
You're being awake. You're trying to make things better for yourself. In terms of being free, this is, to me, the foundational piece to help you be more free with food.
Mm-hmm.
Is to take away the label, to take away the brokenness, and start today fresh and new by saying, I'm Scott, I'm a good human being. And like any other human being, I got things I'm working on. This is one of them.
Yeah, that's really great. I totally, I'm really excited about what you're saying. I mean, you're giving me the freedom to say, I was in my past. I'm a different person today. I don't need to carry it around like, luggage that's lassoed to my leg, or tethered. I have that freedom now.
Yes, exactly. And if I may, oftentimes that sort of freedom, it's a practice. We have to practice it every day. We just have to remind ourselves every day, oh, I'm free of that. Because sometimes it might creep back in. So, like writing is a practice. You don't get better at it unless you do it consistently. You do it consistently, you can really get better at it. Freedom is a practice, reminding yourself if you start to go into old conversation, if you start to go into some of the old, more toxic thoughts, then, oh, let me catch myself. I'm not that guy anymore. I'm a healthy human being. I'm a healthy man who's in his king stage of life. And I continue to make my relationship with food better and better. It ain't perfect, but I'm making it better and better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great point.
I'm excited for you, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm excited too. I mean, you've really opened my eyes to something, looked at something differently. I just finished a book about Stephen Jobs. He's just like this brilliant guy, and nobody remembers him, I don't think. Thinks about Stephen Jobs as being, that guy with the eating disorder. I mean, he had a severe problem with food. I mean, even to the day that he died, he wasn't eating the way the doctors told him to eat. And yet, he had such a profound effect in our world. I don't know. I just, he also had an advertising campaign that went back many years ago after Apple II, which was one of the first Apple computers that they did. And anyway, Apple started sliding and they were 6 months away from bankruptcy. And so he started this campaign called Think Different, and that you needed to think different in order to be kind of somebody that really appreciated Apple. Mm-hmm. And yes. I've maintained that I need to have a Think Different campaign myself.
Love it.
And that is what you're suggesting to me, is that is my Think Different campaign. And it truly is.
You got it. It really is. And practice it and take it seriously, and just give yourself a good chunk of time where you say, for the next 4 months or so, I'm just taking the term eating disorder out of my vocabulary, out of my thoughts. If it pops into your thoughts, let it go, and keep creating your new context, your new story. Mm-hmm. And whatever words you need to say that in, that I'm a person who's whole and present and here and has done a lot of work on himself and continues to do work on himself. And there's areas that I'm improving in. Some areas I'm pretty good in. Some areas, I'm still learning.
Right.
It's all good.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
Well, Scott, what a great conversation.
Yeah, it really went in a direction I wasn't expecting, and it was very enlightening. And I really appreciate the suggestions that you've given me and the feedback, and I've really enjoyed this time that we've shared.
Same here, my friend, and I appreciate you being willing to, this is a big shift. What I suggested is not small. It's not minor. It's a paradigm shift, but you really got it. And you see the usefulness in it potentially for yourself, and, what a great thing. So I appreciate you. I really appreciate our conversation, and my best wishes to you on your journey, my friend.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it too. I really do. Thanks for having me on today and giving me such an enlightening experience. And I hope our paths run into each other again.
Same here. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for tuning in. I really appreciate you being here. More to come, my friends.
Hey friends, we're so happy that you've joined us for another episode of The Psychology of Eating with Marc David. Are you loving these episodes? Then simply subscribe and you'll never miss an episode again. We'd also love it if you'd leave us a comment below so we can hear more about your own journey with food and body. And if you're curious about what we offer at the Institute for the Psychology of Eating, including our internationally acclaimed coach certification training that's rooted in dynamic eating psychology and mind-body nutrition, please head on over to our website, psychologyofeating.com. Until next time, take care. And remember, having the body you want starts with loving the body you have.